I was halfway through welding a decorative hinge when I heard metal scream. Not the kind you expect, not the clean whine of steel giving under flame. This was blunt, ripping, rude, like someone was peeling apart history with a crowbar. I stepped outside in my work boots, still wearing my leather apron, and there they were. Two guys in bright HOA vests, one holding a can of orange spray paint, the other prying at the base of my front gate with a damn wrecking bar. A camera crew stood across the street. Boom mic, tripod, woman with a clipboard. And right in the middle of it all, standing like she owned not just the sidewalk, but my entire bloodline, Janice Cross. She looked straight at the camera and said, "This is a reclamation project. We're here today to begin restoring this space to its rightful history." Then she smiled. That dry PR smile, the kind you see on politicians before they gut school budgets. I walked up, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. One of the workers had just tagged the center panel of the gate, the one with my mother's initials, EH, with a fluorescent X. "Ma'am," I said loud enough to interrupt whatever hero narrative she was about to deliver, "you're standing on private property." Janice turned like I'd just inconvenienced her spa day. "Mr. Hollis," she said, cool as a glass of boxed Chardonnay, "we're exercising Article 7 under the Neighborhood Improvement Initiative, Public Safety and Historical Realignment." She actually said historical realignment. I laughed, out loud. Because in that moment, watching a woman in heels point to the gate my mother welded by hand with a diamond-tip rod and years of calluses, I knew exactly what this was. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was war. My mother built that gate during the coldest winter on record. 1993, snow so thick it buried our truck tires, power lines down. Local men too busy to take on side work from a lady blacksmith. So she did it herself. Torch, anvil, snowdrifts waist high. She didn't care. Each section of the gate was hand-forged and marked with her initials, hammered into the lower bars like stubborn little scars. She called it her final project, even though she lived another 20 years. "This gate," she told me once, wiping ash off her face, "will outlast both of us. That's how you leave a mark. You make something permanent, not polite." She never painted it. "Paint lies," she'd say. "Let the rust show where time did its work." After she passed, I came back from Portland, left behind design studios and cement budgets to take over the property, restored the roof, replaced plumbing with my own hands. But the gate? Never touched it. That was her altar, her war memorial, her signature. And today, some petty suburban queen with a PR budget and a fake smile had put an X through it. No warning, no notice, no paperwork, just a camera crew, a lie, and a crowbar. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a laminated flyer zip-tied to my mailbox. Bold red letters at the top, Neighborhood Aesthetic Review Notice. Now, just to be clear, I'm not part of any neighborhood. I live on a standalone parcel with its own zoning, outside the Desert Bluffs Vista HOA boundary. Always have been. My property's been here since before their development even had roads. You need a separate address just to find me on Google Maps. So naturally, I assumed it was some kind of mistake. But nope, this wasn't junk mail. This was personal. I opened it up, and there it was, a 3-paragraph monologue about incongruent visual elements, unharmonious historic metal structures, and something called community continuity impact scoring. What the hell does that even mean? Apparently, my front gate, the one made by my mother's hands, was considered a non-compliant vertical intrusion. Let that sink in. A non-compliant vertical intrusion. I called the HOA number printed on the bottom, mostly out of curiosity. I genuinely wanted to hear the voice of someone who thought that phrase belonged in a sentence. The woman who picked up introduced herself as Kaylee with a forced brightness that sounded like she'd been trained to smile while being stabbed. "Oh, hi, Mr. Hollis. Yes, we've had several visual complaints from community members about your fencing." I told her it wasn't a fence. It was a handmade gate on private land, with no overlap into HOA property. She paused for like 2 seconds before saying, "We're aware. But you are considered part of the adjacent influence zone, so your property contributes to overall curb impression." I had to actually sit down. I wrote that down, word for word. Adjacent, influence, zone. I asked her flat out, "Is that a real legal term or something you came up with in a branding meeting?" She got a little flustered, started citing Section 4B of the Architectural Visibility Addendum, which, again, I don't fall under, because I'm not in their HOA. I said, "Kaylee, unless you can walk onto my land and prove I signed something, your HOA has the same legal authority over me as the Easter Bunny. Kindly remove me from your nonsense mailing list." She hesitated. Well, we still encourage cooperation, and our president, Ms. Cross, is very interested in collaborating with you to find a visually harmonious solution. And that was the first time I heard her name, Janice Cross. I didn't know it yet, but that laminated flyer wasn't just a passive-aggressive attempt at neighborhood feng shui. It was a shot across the bow. And Janice wasn't interested in cooperation. She wanted a show. I figured after that phone call, they'd back off. Wrong. A week later, I walked out to find a sign planted just outside my fence line. Not on my land, technically. They were smart about that, but close enough to make the message loud and public. Big, bold lettering, future site of the Desert Bluffs. Community Art Corridor. Underneath, a vision of unity, safety, and shared legacy. And wouldn't you know it? There was a big glossy rendering taped to the board, showing a modernized pedestrian walkway curving right through the spot where my mother's gate currently stands. And in its place, some sleek, soulless aluminum arch with powder-coated panels in pastel blue. Looked like something you'd see outside a smoothie bar. I tore the sign down, tossed it into my burn barrel. Took all of 10 seconds. That same afternoon, I got an envelope on my doorstep, hand-delivered, not mailed. Inside was a formal community realignment proposal with Desert Bluffs HOA letterhead. Attached was a so-called petition of local support with 23 printed names. I recognized maybe 3, all residents of the HOA 2 streets over. I also noticed the petition wasn't actually signed, just names typed in 12-point Arial, not even a checkmark. That night, I got tagged on Facebook by someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. The Desert Bluffs HOA page had posted a drone photo of my property with a caption that said, "Community Spotlight, Forgotten Spaces in Need of Restoration." They blurred the address but left everything else, the gate, my truck, the exact shape of my driveway, fully visible. I left a comment under the post. "This forgotten space pays its own taxes. Kindly forget it harder." It got a few likes. Then it got deleted, along with my ability to comment. They were trying to frame my land like it was part of their problem, like I was just some aging eccentric who didn't know he was dragging down property values with his industrial relics. And that's when it got personal. 3 days later, I came home from a supply run, welding rods, new visor, coffee, to find a missing panel on the gate. The center one, the one with the initials, gone. Not vandalized, not broken, just removed. Clean cuts at the joints, like it had been professionally unscrewed and carried off. There were no footprints, no broken lock, nothing else touched, and no note. That was the part that really got to me, because whoever took it wasn't trying to send a warning. They were trying to erase her. I filed a police report. Officer barely looked up from his tablet. "Could be scrap metal thieves," he said. "They hit a few properties on the east side last month." I told him the panel wasn't scrap. I told him it had initials, a handmade stamp. He shrugged, promised to log it. But I knew exactly who it was. Maybe not the hands, but the head behind it? Janice Cross. She hadn't just escalated. She'd crossed a line. And I was done playing polite. First thing I did was give the benefit of the doubt, just once. I printed out a photo of the missing gate panel from a documentary still, circled the initials EH in red Sharpie, and walked it over to the HOA office. It's inside this slick, glass-walled clubhouse with fake reclaimed wood floors and that eucalyptus air freshener that smells like regret. The receptionist, girl couldn't have been older than 25, badge said Brittany with a little heart over the I, looked up like I was interrupting her very important job of doing absolutely nothing. "I need to speak with Janice Cross," I said, calm and clear. She smiled, that tight little smile you save for creeps and complaints. "Is this regarding community improvements?" "No," I said. "This is about theft." That changed the temperature. She picked up the phone and whispered something I couldn't catch, then told me to have a seat. 15 minutes later, Janice showed up, sunglasses still on inside, like she was stepping off a yacht instead of walking in from her BMW. She didn't offer to shake my hand, just crossed her arms and said, "Mr. Hollis, if you've come to harass my staff." I held up the photo. "Do you recognize this panel? It was removed from my gate last week, quietly, cleanly, no note, no explanation." She barely looked at it. "I'm sorry, I can't comment on criminal matters. You'll have to take that up with local law enforcement." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "Oh, I did. They said maybe it was scrap thieves. Seemed real interested in solving it, too. I'm guessing that's how this works? Hide behind jurisdiction until the problem disappears?" Janice sighed, the kind of sigh that says, "I'm done with you before you even finish talking." "You're making this difficult," she said. "You were invited to collaborate, to modernize. This property could be part of something meaningful." I stepped in closer. It already was meaningful. You just didn't like whose name was on it. That got her, a flicker behind the sunglasses, then total composure. This conversation is over, Mr. Hollis. If you continue this behavior, we'll have no choice but to pursue a nuisance claim through municipal channels. I blinked. You're calling me a nuisance? She didn't answer, just turned and walked off like I was a raccoon in her hedge. So next stop, City Hall. I brought everything. My deed, zoning maps, a copy of the petition they'd fake signed, even stills from the old documentary featuring the gate. I had it all laid out in a manila folder like I was about to pitch a damn TED Talk. The guy I met with, Brian something, looked like a budget weather anchor, kept adjusting his tie like it was strangling him. I laid it out as simply as I could. My land isn't in the HOA. Their attempts to rename, redesign, and repaint it are overreach. Someone stole a physical piece of my property, and now I'm being publicly framed as an eyesore to justify a fake improvement project. He nodded the whole way through. Wow, yeah, that does sound troubling. I waited. Then he said, unfortunately, since the HOA's proposals were filed as part of a community beautification grant, and since your land borders the proposed project area, there's limited action we can take unless it's deemed a formal dispute. A formal dispute? Correct. You'd need to enter into arbitration. With an organization I don't legally belong to. He smiled, like that made everything better. It's a gray area, but HOA influence zones have been expanding statewide. It's part of the new community planning initiative. Maybe this is an opportunity to find compromise. I just sat there for a second, then stood up, gathered my folder, and said, tell you what, Brian, if someone broke into your garage and stole your dad's old war medals, would you call it an opportunity for compromise, or would you call it theft? He didn't answer, just shifted in his chair like he wanted the floor to open up. I left, and that was it. No legal recourse, no police interest, no support from the city. And Janice, still posting weekly updates about the restoration initiative like she was Maya Angelou in a pantsuit. I gave peace a shot. Now I was out of patience, and I was done being quiet. I found the tape by accident. I wasn't looking for some big reveal, I was just reorganizing the garage. Well, garage is generous. It's more like a dusty steel barn full of rusted clamps, half-empty acetylene tanks, and a tool bench that still smells like my mother's work gloves. I was pulling down an old milk crate labeled Shop Admin 1987 to 1995, mostly full of invoices and scrap ledgers, when a little black cassette slipped out and hit the concrete, unlabeled, just a blank Maxell tape. I almost tossed it. Seriously, I had a pile going for Goodwill or garbage, depending on mood, but something about it, the way it was tucked under a folder marked Termination Personnel, made me pause. So I found Mom's old tape deck, popped it in, hit play. It took a second for the static to clear, then I heard her voice. My mother. Not the public version, not the voice she used at city meetings or customer calls. This was her shop voice. Calm, tired, sharp when it needed to be. She was talking to someone. Another woman. I didn't recognize the voice right away, but she sounded nervous, defensive, and then she said a name. I'm sorry, Eleanor, I didn't think it would go this far. That's when my stomach dropped. Eleanor was my mother's name, and the other voice, I hadn't heard it in years, but once you've been scolded by it in a PTA hallway or had your friend's mom guilt you into saying grace properly, you don't forget it. It was Janice Cross's mother, Marlene. I stopped the tape, rewound, sat down on the concrete floor, hit play again. The conversation was rough. Marlene had been working in my mom's shop for about 6 months back in the early 90s, mostly doing basic prep work, helping out on weekends. My mom had given her the job as a favor after Marlene's husband walked out and she was left with a kid and bills. Turns out she started helping herself to more than just shop rags. Raw materials started going missing. Brass, steel stock, even finished work. Just small stuff at first, but enough to notice. Mom confronted her gently at first, then directly. Marlene denied it. Until this tape. I shouldn't have taken it. I just thought, after everything I did for you. My mother's voice didn't flinch. You stole from me, Marlene. I treated you like a partner. You repaid it by lying. That's not desperation. That's betrayal. There was a long pause. Then Marlene said something that made my spine lock up. You act like your name's gonna live on forever because of some damn gate, but what about mine? She was crying, but there was venom underneath it. Jealousy. Rage. One day they'll forget you, and people will remember me differently. I shut off the tape, just sat there for a long time, elbows on my knees, tape deck humming, and that's when it clicked. This wasn't about city planning. It wasn't about curb appeal. It wasn't even about HOA expansion. Janice wasn't trying to erase the gate for the community. She was trying to erase it for her mother. This was a decades-old grudge, passed down like trauma wrapped in a brochure. Janice had grown up hearing her mom's version of the story, the cold boss, the injustice, the theft of opportunity. And now that she had power, now that she ran the very neighborhood that once looked down on them, she wanted revenge, not through fire or vandalism, through rebranding. She wanted to rewrite history, strip the name, replace the object, rename the shop in her mother's memory, turn my mother's legacy into a footnote. Hell, maybe even claim the design as her own. Wouldn't surprise me, and I'll admit, for about 10 minutes I felt sick. Not angry, just sick. Because I realized the panel wasn't stolen out of greed. It was stolen out of grief, misguided, twisted, but deeply personal. And then I felt something colder than anger, colder than sadness, clarity. She was playing legacy games. She thought this was about memory. She had no idea who she was messing with. You know what's funny? Once you realize your enemy's fighting a ghost war, trying to avenge something they never understood in the first place, it suddenly gets very easy to beat them, because they're stuck in the past. But me? I work with metal. I build the future. The minute I heard that tape, I knew exactly what I had to do, not just to stop Janice, not just to get the gate back, but to make sure no one ever dared to rewrite my mother's story again. So I started making calls. First, I tracked down a guy named Teddy Hart. He's a filmmaker, used to do short docs for local PBS back in the day. He was the one who filmed the original segment on my mom's workshop in the 90s. I hadn't spoken to him in maybe 15 years. Turns out he remembered the project like it was yesterday. "Your mom was the real deal," he said. Half the crew cried during the interviews. I told him I had something new that might interest him. I sent him a digitized copy of the tape, just the audio, no context. 10 minutes later, he called me back. Silence for a beat. Then he said, "Let's make something beautiful." He had a team lined up in 24 hours, young, hungry filmmakers with social followings that could light up a hashtag in their sleep. They were all in. While that was happening, I went to the county historical registry. Now here's the thing. I'd never bothered to register the shop or the gate as a historical structure. My mom never wanted the attention. Said if something needed a plaque to matter, it probably didn't matter in the first place. But times had changed. I brought them everything. The documentary footage, property records, close-ups of the gate construction, even old blueprints she'd sketched on diner napkins. I also brought the tape, not the original, just a transcription labeled personal correspondence, not for public use. Just enough to show why this mattered. I filed an emergency petition for heritage protection under Article 19, Female Industrial Pioneers. The clerk told me those filings usually take 6 to 8 months. I nodded. Sure, but when the documentary drops and local media is knocking on your door asking why a forged history is being prioritized over a legitimate one, what should I tell them your timeline is? She stared at me, blinked twice, said she'd escalate it to the board. I smiled and said, appreciated. Next step, the Veterans Memorial Council. See, what Janice didn't know, or maybe she never bothered to ask, was that my mom didn't just make gates for art's sake. She donated custom work for memorial plaques all across the county. 2 of those gates still stand at the entrance of the war cemetery. Her stamp is on everyone, EH, lower right corner. I called the council chair, guy named Ramon King, Vietnam vet. Never met my mom personally, but he knew the gates. The widow blacksmith from the east side, right? Made those iron poppies. I said, that's the one. Her workshop's under threat. Thought you might want to see how the county handles veterans' tributes when no one's watching. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, send me the address. I'll bring friends. And I wasn't done. Because if Janice wanted public narrative, oh, I'd give her one. But it wouldn't be hers. I called a friend of mine, Sonia, who runs a local nonprofit for young women in trades, welding, mechanics, restoration. Asked if she'd be interested in doing a weekend heritage workshop using my mother's old forge as the centerpiece. Hell yes, she said. You okay with cameras? Please, she said, I hope they bring drones. By the end of the week, I had a documentary crew prepping interviews, a historical landmark petition under review, a Veterans Council ready to write an open letter, and a scheduled event to teach 12 teenage girls how to lay a proper bead across a steel seam, in the very shop Janice was trying to whitewash. And as a final cherry on top, I drafted a little speech, not long, maybe 5 minutes. Just a simple, calm explanation of who Eleanor Hollis was, what she built, who tried to steal it, and why they failed. I didn't know where I'd deliver it yet, but I had a strong feeling the opportunity was going to come knocking. Soon. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Didn't need to. I just cleared out the shop, pressure washed the floor, oiled the hinges, and left the big roll-up door open like a mouth waiting to speak. Saturday morning, 8 a.m., I set out a folding table, 2 coffee urns, a stack of shop gloves, and a handwritten sign that said, Heritage Forge, workshop, and free. Girls 13, plus welcome. By 8:17, Sonia showed up with a van full of teenagers and a Bluetooth speaker blasting classic rock. By 8:30, the first news van pulled up, and by 9 o'clock, we were mic'd. I didn't orchestrate the media attention directly. That was Teddy. He'd sent out teasers. One woman's legacy, nearly erased, a gate, a name, a tape. It was vague enough to stir curiosity, but specific enough to sound urgent. The local paper sent a reporter. The regional NPR affiliate sent 2. Even the town's lifestyle influencer, the one who usually reviews brunch spots and eucalyptus candles, rolled up with a ring light and a drone. They ate it up. The girls were practicing welds using Eleanor's original jigs. They were laughing, focused, proud. One of them, a 15-year-old named Evie, turned out to be a natural. I handed her my mother's old slag hammer and said, "This thing's never been held by anyone but family." She smiled like I'd handed her a sword. Around noon, Teddy called me over. "We're doing it," he said, showing me the phone. He'd just dropped the first cut of the short doc, 4.5 minutes, on YouTube, TikTok, and every social platform he could hit at once. Title, The Gate They Tried to Forget. Thumbnail, my mother smiling in black and white, standing in front of the gate. Within the hour, it had 10,000 views. By that evening, it was over 60,000 and climbing. And right in the middle of it, between the images of her work and audio clips from the tape, was one brutal, quiet moment. Marlene Cross, voice cracking, saying, "You act like your name's gonna live on forever, but what about mine?" We didn't name names. Didn't need to. Locals knew. And then came the letter. Ramon King and the Veterans Memorial Council published an open statement on Facebook and in the local newspaper, full-page ad. It called the gate a functional monument, declared my mother's work historically significant, and shamed the Desert Bluffs HOA for blatant cultural erasure under the guise of beautification. That same day, a neighborhood mom posted a video standing in front of her own backyard gate, another Eleanor original, explaining how it had stood untouched for 22 years and was now her daughter's favorite place to read. The video hit 100K in 2 days. It started a chain reaction. Folks came forward, some with photos of work my mother had done decades ago, others with stories, invoices, sketches. A guy posted a shot of his workshop gate that Eleanor had made for his father, said it held through 3 hurricanes and 2 divorces. And the comments? Relentless. This is what the HOA tried to erase? Eleanor Hollis deserves a statue. Whoever approved that replacement arch needs to resign. By Monday, I started getting emails. First from the city, then from the county historical registry. My petition for landmark status? Approved, expedited, effective immediately. The gate, the shop, and everything within the original perimeter were now protected under the Women in Trades Preservation Act, with Eleanor listed by name. They even added a clause. Any attempt to relocate, modify, or remove original structural elements must be reviewed and approved by the Preservation Board. Translation? Janice couldn't touch a damn thing. Not with a crowbar, a drone, or a Photoshop render. She'd lost. But just in case she didn't get the message, I printed out the full landmark approval letter and had it framed. Then I walked it right over to the HOA clubhouse. Brittany, the receptionist, wasn't in. Janice was, though. I could see her through the glass conference room, sitting alone at the big oak table, looking like someone who just realized the bomb squad was knocking on her door for once. I walked in, calm as a priest on Sunday, and laid the frame on the front desk. Didn't say a word, just tapped the glass and pointed to the date. She didn't say anything either, but her face looked like rust finally caught up to her. The fall started slow, like a hairline crack in a window, then it spiderwebbed. That Wednesday, Desert Bluffs held their regular HOA town hall. Normally those things are as exciting as warm mayonnaise, but this one, standing room only. People came out with folding chairs, some brought coffee, others brought popcorn. The flyer on the HOA website had said, "Special Session, Addressing Misinformation and Community Identity." Translation, damage control. Janice walked in wearing cream slacks, a tan blouse, and enough pearl jewelry to drown a debutante. She brought her usual confidence, that Botoxed calm, but you could see the edges starting to fray. First up on the agenda, clarification on the gate initiative. She started with a PowerPoint. Of course she did. Slide 1, aerial views of the neighborhood. Slide 2, her fake architectural renderings. Slide 3, a bullet list titled Community Values. But halfway through, someone in the crowd yelled, "Where's the part where you stole a woman's legacy?" The room shifted. Janice ignored it, tried to keep reading. Then Sonia stood up. Yeah, my Sonia. Welding boots, grease on her hoodie, and a printed still from the documentary tucked under her arm. She handed it to a board member. "This is what you tried to erase," she said, pointing to my mother's face. "And these?" She held up photos of the girls welding in the shop. "These are the people you inspired by trying." Applause. Real, not polite. Janice tried to cut her off, said something about emotions clouding productive dialogue. Then an older man near the back stood up, Ramon, veteran's hat, arms crossed. "I knew Eleanor Hollis," he said, voice low but steady. "She made the gate that guards my brother's name in the war cemetery. If you think that archway you photoshopped replaces that, then I got bad news, sweetheart. You're not fit to run a bake sale, let alone a board." Another guy stood up, then a woman, then 3 people at once. Someone shouted, "We signed that petition because we were told it was for sidewalk lighting." Another, "You used my photo on your website without asking." Another, "Why is there HOA money going to pay for camera crews and branding consultants?" The board started looking nervous. Janice said, "This is being hijacked." Too late. Someone pulled up the documentary live on a projector. Full volume, 4.5 minutes of gut punches. My mother forging iron in black and white. Her voice layered over Janice's mother's confession. By the time it ended, the room was silent. No claps, no outrage, just quiet recognition of truth. Then the HOA treasurer, mild guy, khakis, hair that says Excel spreadsheet, cleared his throat and said, "I'd like to make a motion to remove Ms. Cross as board president effective immediately, pending financial and ethical review." A second came from 3 different people at once. Vote was unanimous. I didn't even go, didn't need to. I watched it unfold on a Facebook live stream while sitting in my shop, a beer in hand, gates behind me catching the last golden light of day. Afterward, people started reaching out. A city councilman emailed me to apologize for the confusion and said they were reviewing oversight procedures for HOA zoning influence. The lifestyle influencer who once pushed vegan dog treats posted a reel in front of the restored gate talking about authenticity and how history lives in metal. Hell, even Brittany, the receptionist, dropped off an envelope at my door. Inside was a handwritten note. She made us believe she was right. I'm sorry. And a flash drive. It had internal emails, memos from Janice to the board, including phrases like public perception management and gate narrative overwrite. All of it was forwarded to the county ethics committee. Within 2 weeks, Janice Cross was gone. Resigned to focus on personal matters, but we all knew. Her mother's lie had become her life's mission, and it collapsed under the weight of one truth spoken plainly and backed by a welding torch. That fake art corridor she planned? Dead. The glossy renderings? Pulled from every site. The replacement arch? Never ordered. Instead, the real gate, my mother's gate, was featured on the county's historical walking tour. Map and everything. They even added a QR code that links to the documentary. Now tourists stop by on weekends and take photos. Sometimes they ask if I'm related to the woman who made that. I just nod. Yeah, I say. She's the reason you're seeing it instead of a HOA-branded salad bar entrance. A month after it all went down, I finally welded the panel back into place. The missing one. My mother's initials, EH, cut clean, curved with that left-handed arc she always used. We'd found it dumped behind a storage unit on the outskirts of town, bent but not broken. Just like her. I reforged the seam myself. No camera crew, no speech, just me, my tools, and the kind of silence that buzzes more than it rests. When it cooled, I stood back and looked at it for a long time. Then I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and drank it on the porch. Not a toast, just a moment. The girls from the workshop still come by sometimes. They drop off little metal trinkets they've made. Hooks, initials, one of them even brought a small sculpture of a welding mask with flowers blooming out of it. It's weird and beautiful. I keep it on the shop bench next to my mom's old glove. The shop's not open to the public, but I leave the front gate open every Sunday. Some folks walk through, others just stop outside and take it in. The kind of reverence you don't teach, just feel. Nobody tags it, nobody messes with it. Even the teens on skateboards slow down when they pass. One guy, local teacher, brought his whole class last week. They stood in a semicircle while he read them the plaque. The QR code still works. Documentary's over 300K views now. Sometimes they ask me if I'm going to add anything, lights, signage, maybe a mural. I say no, the metal speaks just fine on its own. As for Janice, she sold her house 2 weeks after the resignation, moved out quiet. No goodbye parties, no posts. Word is she's trying to rebrand as a consultant for heritage-sensitive development in Arizona. Good luck with that. Last I checked, her HOA's board had replaced her with a local librarian named Marcy, who wears cat sweaters and quotes zoning law like scripture. Marcy sent me a handwritten letter. We're not perfect, but we'd like to do better. Thank you for forcing the conversation. It's tacked inside the shop, right next to the one from Brittany. I never replied. Didn't feel like I needed to. Sometimes the best statement is the one you don't hammer, the one you let stand, like a gate, solid, weathered, and finally exactly where it belongs.